Las Vegas Raiders star receiver Davante Adams making sure the area is clear before he goes through the tunnel. This guy wants to avoid a lawsuit as he'll have a court hearing November 10th against a cameraman who alleges that he assaulted him by bumping into him in Arrowhead when he was in a pathway that he shouldn't have been in anyways. And so Davante Adams is taking no chances even in Allegiant Stadium. And as the Raiders look towards the rest of their schedule and kind of hope for some type of playoff berth as the rest of the AFC West crumbles around them, the Chargers falling to the Seattle Seahawks with Geno Smith, and also the Broncos having tons of poor media coverage. Arguably, Brett Rypien looked better than Russell Wilson. And Josh Jacobs has been one of the key factors for the Raiders' success, and it's sort of ironic because the Raiders went out there, gave Derek Carr an extension, gave Davante Adams a huge contract, re-signed Hunter Renfrow, and also re-signed Darren Waller. But outside of Davante Adams, you haven't seen any of these people explode on the scene throughout the 2022 season, but Josh Jacobs has. And now Josh Jacobs is in this odd situation. Josina Anderson commenting on the fact that the Raiders and Josh Jacobs into the future, could they re-sign this guy? Who knows? They made Darren Waller the highest paid tight end in terms of average money per year. Will they do the same with Josh Jacobs after declining his fifth-year option? This is going to be a key critical thing, and it's going to look really bad on Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels if they do move on from Josh Jacobs after the season and he turns out to be the only guy to really show up and be super productive on the offensive side of the ball. We can take a look at some of the highest paid running backs in the NFL: Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook. You look at these contracts, roughly $15 million a year for these contracts. Once you get to the fifth highest, like Derrick Henry, it goes down a little bit, about $11 million a year and whatnot. And then also with Joe Mixon, you also have a contract roughly $12 million a year. So that is something that you could see happening. Could Josh Jacobs maybe not be the highest paid running back in the NFL? Maybe not $15 million a year, but could he be top 10? Could he hover around 10, 11 million, 10 to $12 million a year? Could the Raiders make that happen? And we could take a look at the Raiders cap space for the 2023 season. Yes, we know the Raiders are going to have to re-sign a lot of players. They're going to lose a lot of players to free agency. So you're going to have some holes in your roster, which is why this cap space looks a lot bigger than it actually is. But as of right now, it's $32 million in cap space for next season. That is enough change to give Jacobs $10 to $12 million a year. And then maybe you can restructure some other contracts of people who are guaranteed, lower their cap hit, and have it converted to a bonus. Therefore, you can have some more cap space to fill in those holes in your roster. Think of players like Derek Carr, Davante Adams, Darren Waller, people who are going to be here anyways next year, especially Chandler Jones, who's locked in all the way to 2024. These are all guys that you can restructure to free up even more cap space than that $32 million to keep an amazing running back like Josh Jacobs, who is playing like one of the best running backs in the NFL. The stats really do not lie here. Look at Josh Jacobs, ranked third in the NFL in rushing yards behind Saquon Barkley, behind Nick Chubb. And keep in mind, he has less attempts than these guys. He only has 111 attempts. Saquon Barkley has almost 30 more than him. And then Nick Chubb has 10, 15 more than him. But this guy is almost tied with him, third most in the NFL in terms of rushing yards. And then in terms of touchdowns, he is tied for second in the NFL, tied with Jamal Williams of the Detroit Lions with 6 touchdowns on the year. And PFF is loving Josh Jacobs as he has the highest ranked rushing PFF grade in the entire NFL with the 92 PFF grade. And the Raiders quietly have a lot of players who are highly ranked throughout the NFL. Davante Adams, of course, has the 7th most receiving yards in the NFL with 507. And when you look at touchdowns, he actually is ranked 3rd in the entire NFL with 5 touchdowns. Only 6 touchdowns is ahead of him with Stephon Diggs and Jamar Chase. And when you look at these next 3 games for the Raiders, if the Raiders win these next games, then they have a winning record. Then they would be 5-4. And they're going on to face the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. And the thing about the Saints is they've been plagued with injuries. Jarvis Landry hasn't been 100%. Michael Thomas has been out. They've been relying on Andy Dalton rather than Jameis Winston because he's been hurt. The Saints are also 2-5, trying to find some answers. And they're hoping to get a little more healthy after the bye week. But due to the injuries that they have to some of their key players, I don't think a bye week is going to be enough. And the Jaguars have also been struggling. Their only 2 wins come against the Texans and also the Chargers. And this is the Chargers team right after a Justin Herbert injury without Keenan Allen, not a team at 100%. And then when you look at the Colts, the team from the outset who seemed to be the toughest team in this 3-week stretch is actually crumbling. Matt Ryan has been benched indefinitely, and the Colts are looking to just phone it in this season and look towards next year. And after these 3 weeks, the Raiders go on to face the Denver Broncos, who have been a complete disaster. They're also going to face the Seattle Seahawks, who I think, out of all these teams that we've talked about so far, look to be the toughest team, especially after beating the Chargers. Geno Smith seems like a good game manager, and they do have a decent young defense. And then you go on to face the Chargers. So the Raiders could win all of these games. None of these teams are complete monsters who are straight dominating everyone. That's not who we're facing in these next 6 weeks. But the Seattle Seahawks and the Los Angeles Chargers, very competitive team. Jaguars have shown some flashes, and the New Orleans Saints are getting healthier coming off a bye. But it is getting tougher for the Chargers. They haven't had Keenan Allen, and now Mike Williams has suffered a high ankle sprain, looking to miss some time. And also, J.C. Jackson suffered an injury. He's going to miss some time as well. And I do want to give Dave Ziegler credit on his drafting with the offensive line. The Raiders did not have a first or second round pick, but they still found Dylan Parham, who's been a great offensive lineman so far. And Thayer Mumford has risen and filled in nicely at that right tackle position. According to Eric Schatz here right now, the Raiders lead the NFL with 5.70 adjusted line yards per carry. No other offense is above 5.1, and they've only been stuffed for a loss or no gain 11% of the time. That's second behind Green Bay. So the Raiders offensive line is doing an amazing job despite being one of the cheapest lines in the NFL and one of the youngest lines in the NFL. So Dave Ziegler really knew what he was doing and trusted himself in finding some late round draft picks to fill in nicely for the offensive line. And even after a disastrous start to the season, the Raiders sit here at third place in the division, only 1 game behind the Chargers and only 2 games behind the Chiefs, and they could have beaten the Chiefs in that Monday Night Football game. So I know people want to say, oh, you're a homer, you have too much faith in the Raiders, but you just can't sit here and tell me that the Raiders can't just straight up run the table right now, especially now that they enter a weaker portion of their schedule, and now the AFC West appears to be wide open. Over 60% of my viewers are not subscribed. Make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Raiders content. My name is WiFiWillie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.